Hey guys, tonight we begin with the quiet, endless mud of the First World War trenches, a place where the ground never seemed to dry, where every step could leave you sinking, and where the air itself carried a smell you might never forget. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, these slow, steady journeys into the past. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you right now. It's always fascinating to imagine listeners from all around the world sharing this quiet moment together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease gently into tonight's story to discover why you wouldn't last a single day in the trenches of the First World War, and what life there was truly like. You wake before the sun rises. There isn't a clock to tell you the time, but the faintest light on the horizon, barely more than a grey smudge, suggests that dawn is approaching. It's not the kind of waking that comes with a stretch and a yawn, but the kind where you slowly open your eyes and wonder if you ever really slept at all. Your back is sore from the damp earth beneath you, and your shoulders ache from lying twisted on the rough, narrow ledge that passes for a bed. The first thing you notice is the air, cold, heavy, and thick with moisture. Your breath fogs in front of you, just barely visible in the pale gloom. Beneath you, you feel it. The mud, always the mud. It's not just beneath you, it is around you, above you, seeping into every space you occupy. It clings to your boots, your clothes, your hands, and somehow it feels as though it clings to your thoughts. You cannot escape it, not here, not in the trench. The ground has been churned up by weeks, even months, of shelling and rain, and what was once a farmer's field has been transformed into a thick, sticky paste of earth and water. It squelches softly when you shift your weight. Your blanket is damp, its corners caked in dried mud from the night before. You pull it tighter around you, but it doesn't make you feel warmer, just heavier. It's hard to describe this mud to someone who has never seen it. It isn't the neat, dark soil of a garden bed, nor is it the firm, dusty dirt of a country road. This is living mud, always moving, always reshaping itself. The surface may look solid, but when you step on it, it gives way, pulling you slightly downward with every footstep. If you stand too long in one place, you feel your boots begin to sink, the mud wrapping itself around your feet as though it would like to keep you there forever. It is a mud that smells, too. The scent is sharp, almost metallic, mixed with the unmistakable odour of stagnant water and rotting vegetation. Somewhere, just beneath the surface, something organic is decaying: grass, wood, perhaps something else you would rather not think about. The trench itself is a narrow scar in this muddy landscape. Its walls, lined with sandbags, are dark and slick, wet from the constant drizzle that seems to hang in the air. You run your hand along the wall as you pull yourself upright, and your fingers come away damp and gritty. Above you, a sliver of pale sky peeks through the torn remains of camouflage netting. You can hear distant sounds, the low rumble of artillery somewhere far away, the muffled voices of men in the next section of trench, the drip, drip, drip of water falling from the boards overhead. You sit for a moment, gathering the courage to stand. Your boots are stiff with dried mud, and when you move your legs, you hear the quiet creak of leather and the soft tearing sound as the boots release their grip on the earth below. You place your feet carefully, because even in the quiet hours before dawn, the floor of the trench is treacherous. There are wooden planks laid down a duckboard path meant to keep you out of the worst of the water, but some of them are missing or broken, swallowed by the mud below. If you misstep, you might sink ankle deep, even knee-deep, before you can pull yourself free. As you stand, the damp air finds its way through your uniform, and you shiver. Your greatcoat is heavy with moisture. It has not been properly dry for days, perhaps weeks. The weight of it seems to pull your shoulders down, as though it, too, is tired. You take a deep breath, tasting the air. It smells faintly of smoke from last night's cooking fire, mixed with the ever-present earthy stench of the trench. You step out onto the duckboard, careful not to slip. The boards are slick, and it would be easy to fall, easy to find yourself lying face first in the mixture of water, dirt, and waste that collects in the lowest parts of the trench. The boards creak softly under your weight, and as you walk, you notice the small details. The scattered shell casings half buried in mud, the discarded tin of rations pressed flat by a boot, the faint footprints of rats that ran along the boards during the night. The trench seems empty at first, but it isn't. There are always others here, always men moving quietly in the early light. One passes you, nodding slightly as he goes, his face half hidden by the brim of his helmet. He, too, is covered in mud. It streaks his greatcoat, clings to his trousers, and leaves smudges on his unshaven face. His boots are coated in a thick layer, so much so that you can no longer see what colour they once were. You walk slowly, almost carefully, because every step reminds you that this ground is not firm. It is soft, and it remembers every footfall. You can see where others have walked before you, the edges of their footprints slowly blurring as more water fills them. Somewhere nearby, water trickles softly into the trench from a cracked pipe. The sound is constant, as though the earth itself is quietly sighing. And then there is the sound of the mud itself. You hear it when you move, a quiet, sucking sound, a whisper of moisture and earth. When you stop, it falls silent, and the trench becomes still again, except for the distant thunder of the guns. There is a strange comfort in this sound, because it means the mud is always there, always the same. It is a reminder that you are still here, still standing, still in the same place as yesterday. You wonder, as you often do, how long the mud has been here. It feels ancient, as though it has always been waiting. Long before the trenches were dug, before the war began, this was farmland. Perhaps wheat grew here once, golden and tall. Perhaps there were cows grazing, or children running through the fields. But now it is only this, a brown, endless expanse of mud, interrupted only by the jagged lines of trenches, the broken stumps of trees, and the occasional shadow of a bird overhead. You find yourself staring at the mud, watching the way the surface shifts slightly when the water moves beneath it. You notice the small ripples as drops of rain land in puddles, and the faint glimmer of reflected light where the water is still. There is a strange hypnotic quality to it, as though if you watched long enough, you might see something else there, some message hidden in the slow movement of the earth. And that is when you realize that the mud is not just part of the trench. It is the trench. It is the floor you walk on, the wall you lean against, the smell you cannot escape. It is in the air you breathe and the water you drink. It is in your clothes, your hair, and under your fingernails. It is everywhere. And though you may try to fight it, scraping it off your boots, washing it from your hands, it always returns. As the light grows stronger, you can see more clearly now. The trench stretches out ahead of you, a narrow, winding path between walls of earth. The mud glistens in the early light, reflecting the pale sky above. You hear the sound of someone behind you, splashing as they make their way forward, and you step aside to let them pass. The mud pulls at your boots, reluctant to let you go, but you keep moving. Somewhere far away, a shell explodes, a dull thud that rolls across the landscape like distant thunder. You pause for a moment, listening, but no one seems alarmed. It is just part of the morning soundscape, like the wind, like the birds, like the endless drip of water. You pull your coat tighter around you, take another careful step, and feel the mud shift under you again. The day has only just begun, but already the mud is there, reminding you that this place is not yours. You are only a visitor here, passing through, and the mud will outlast you. And so you walk on, slowly, deliberately, into the endless grey of morning. The mud squelches softly with every step, and the trench seems to stretch on forever, a narrow, winding path through a world of earth and water. You do not hurry. There is no need. The day will be long, and the mud will be waiting for you at every turn. The faint light grows a little stronger now, enough to turn the trench from a dark shape into something that almost looks familiar, though never quite welcoming. You hear the faint scrape of boots on the duckboards behind you. It is not hurried, not urgent, just the slow, careful walk of another soldier beginning his morning. A cough echoes from somewhere farther down the trench, deep and wet, and is followed by a muttered word you can't quite make out. Morning in the trenches doesn't begin all at once. It seeps in gradually, like the mist that drifts over the shattered earth, touching each man in his own time, rousing him gently from whatever shallow sleep he was able to manage. You step aside, letting another soldier pass. He carries a dented enamel mug, steaming faintly, which means someone has already lit a small fire in the next bay and brewed tea. The sight of that thin curl of steam feels like an invitation, though you know you will have to wait your turn. There is no rush. Nothing here is rushed unless the guns demand it. You find yourself glancing at the dugout entrance nearby. Its wooden doorframe leans slightly inward, the boards dark with moisture, the earth around it crumbling at the edges. From inside comes the muffled sound of movement, the scrape of boots, the clink of a tin cup, a quiet curse as someone bangs a knee against the low entrance. You crouch slightly to look inside and see the faint glow of a candle stub, flickering just enough to illuminate the cramped space within. Men are stirring, sitting up on their narrow sleeping shelves, brushing lice from their collars, rubbing their eyes. Someone pulls on a boot and grunts as he forces the stiff leather over a foot that has been swollen all night from the damp. The smell that wafts out of the dugout is a mixture of candle wax, damp wool, sweat, and the ever-present odour of earth. It is not pleasant, but it is warm, and there is something about that warmth that feels almost protective. You step back and let them emerge one by one, blinking against the growing light, shoulders hunched against the morning chill. Each man carries something of the night with him, a blanket slung over one shoulder, a rumpled cap pulled low, an unlit cigarette between his lips. As they move past you, they do not speak much. The first words of the day are always quiet ones. A muttered greeting, a short laugh, perhaps a comment about the cold. But for the most part, there is silence, broken only by the sounds of movement, the rustle of fabric, the clink of tin, the creak of the wooden planks underfoot. Somewhere down the line, a whistle blows. Not a sharp blast, not an alarm, just a short, almost casual sound. It signals the routine of the morning stand-to. Everyone who is able lines up along the firing step, peering cautiously over the parapet as the sky begins to pale. It is a ritual as old as the trenches themselves, a precaution against surprise attack at dawn. You climb up carefully, your hands finding the familiar grip of the rough sandbags, and place one boot on the step. The earth crumbles slightly under your weight, and you adjust until you are steady. You stand there quietly, feeling the cold wind brush against your face. The world beyond the trench is still a dark, uneven blur, a wasteland of shattered tree trunks, coils of barbed wire, and shell holes filled with black water. Nothing moves out there except for the occasional ripple on the water's surface when a bird lands. But still you watch. Everyone watches. For a few long minutes, there is no sound except for the wind and the slow breathing of the men around you. Then, slowly, you step down again, the ritual complete. Another day has officially begun. You make your way toward the fire trench, where someone has managed to coax a small blue flame from a pile of kindling. The smoke rises lazily, curling around the dugout entrance before disappearing into the morning air. You squat beside it, holding out your hands to feel the faint warmth. The man tending the fire nods at you, wordless, and pours a splash of tea into a second mug. The liquid is weak, almost colourless, but it is hot. You wrap your fingers around the tin cup, feeling the heat seep into your chilled skin. The first sip burns your tongue slightly, but you welcome it. Breakfast is simple, as it always island. A slice of bread, hard at the edges, perhaps a smear of jam if you are lucky. Sometimes there is a tin of bully beef, opened with a clumsy twist of the key, the gelatinous contents scooped out with a dull knife. The men eat quietly, squatting on the duckboards or sitting on upturned crates. There is no table, no proper meal, just whatever can be held in one hand while the other keeps the mug from tipping. You notice one man carefully scraping the mud from his boots with a stick, flicking it away before taking another bite. Another pulls out a small comb and runs it through his hair, frowning at the tiny lice he finds and crushing them between his fingernails. These small tasks are part of the morning routine, a way to assert a little order in a place that offers very little of it. The light has strengthened now, enough to turn the sky from grey to pale blue. You can see more of the men's faces pale, unshaven, marked with fatigue. Some have dark circles under their eyes. Others have the blank, faraway look of someone who woke too many times during the night to ever feel truly rested. And yet, there is a kind of quiet normality to all of this. The morning routine is predictable, almost comforting in its repetition. You know that after breakfast, there will be weapons to clean. Rifles are unwrapped from their oilcloths, bolts worked back and forth, barrels wiped free of the damp that might cause them to rust. The smell of gun oil mingles with the smell of smoke and wet earth, sharp and metallic. Somewhere nearby, a pair of men are whispering, passing a cigarette back and forth. They are talking about a letter one of them received yesterday, the paper now soft and smudged from being read and reread. You catch a word or two, a mention of home, of someone's sister, of a dog left behind, and then the whisper fades as they move away. You find yourself staring again at the horizon. The light is clearer now, and you can make out the silhouettes of distant trees, or what remains of them broken, splintered shapes against the sky. There is something strange about the quiet. You know that at any moment the guns might speak again, and the stillness will shatter. But for now, there is only this: the faint crackle of the fire, the distant caw of a crow, the quiet sound of men going about their business. This is how you wake up to war. Not with a sudden shock, but with a slow, reluctant return to a world that is always damp, always cold, always watchful. You stretch your conte. Legs, finish the last of your tea, and stand. The day will be long, you already know that. But for now, there is just the morning, and the quiet work of being alive in a place that seems to resist life at every turn. You wipe your hands on your trousers, noticing the faint streak of mud that you leave behind, and pick up your rifle. The wood feels familiar under your fingers, the metal cold. You sling it over your shoulder and begin walking slowly down the trench again, boots creaking on the boards, steam rising faintly from the tea you have just finished. Around you, other men are doing the same, moving without haste, preparing for whatever this day will bring. The war has already been here for hours, for months, for years. It never sleeps. But you have just woken up to it, once again. The fire has burned down to embers now, leaving behind a thin, curling ribbon of smoke that drifts upward and disappears into the pale morning sky. You crouch beside it for a moment longer, holding your hands near the faint heat, not because it warms you much, but because it feels like part of the ritual. Around you, the trench is fully awake now, in its own quiet, deliberate way. Men move slowly, with the calm of those who know there is no reason to hurry. There is time before the work begins, and these are the moments when each man tends to himself, in whatever small ways he can. You find a tin basin set on a crate near the dugout. The water inside is cold, having been fetched from a nearby reservoir sometime during the night. It is cloudy, with bits of silt and smells faintly metallic, but it will do. You crouch down and dip your hands into it. The chill bites at your fingers, but it wakes them, drives the stiffness from your knuckles. You splash the water onto your face, feeling it drip down your cheeks and soak into the collar of your shirt. The shock of the cold makes you close your eyes for a moment, but when you open them, the world looks sharper somehow. You pull up a small mirror from your kit, the kind no bigger than the palm of your hand, its surface scratched and dull, and prop it against the crate. Your razor is simple, its handle worn smooth from use. You run the blade along a strip of leather to sharpen it, the sound soft and rhythmic. It is an oddly soothing noise, a sound that has been repeated by soldiers for centuries, in wars long past and forgotten. You lather your face with soap, working it into a thin foam with your fingers, the scent faint but clean. The first stroke of the razor is careful, slow. There is no rush here, only the quiet rasp of metal on skin, the soft sound of water as you dip the blade to rinse it. Around you, others are doing the same. Some hum softly to themselves, some whistle, some remain completely silent. The air is filled with the small, unremarkable sounds of men trying to make themselves feel human for another day. When you are done, you run your hand along your jaw, feeling the smoothness of the skin beneath your fingers. You rinse your face one last time, then dry it on a corner of your blanket. The blanket smells of earth and smoke, but it is soft enough to do the job. The basin's water is murkier now, cloudy with soap and stubble, but another man is already kneeling to use it. There is no waste here, every drop of water is precious. You set your things aside and turn your attention to your rifle. It waits where you left it, propped carefully against the trench wall, its metal cold and dark. You sit on the duckboards and begin the familiar process of cleaning it. First you check the barrel, making sure no damp has crept inside during the night. Then you work the bolt, listening to the smooth, mechanical click that sounds reassuring in its consistency. The smell of gun oil rises as you rub a cloth along the wood and metal, and it mixes with the smell of smoke and wet earth until it feels like the scent of morning itself. This routine is as important as eating or sleeping. A clean rifle means a rifle that will not fail you when you need it, and so you take your time, letting each motion become part of a rhythm. Wipe, inspect, oil, reassemble. Others nearby are doing the same, and the quiet clicks and snaps of bolts being worked create a kind of steady music in the trench. When you are finished, you set the rifle down gently, as though it were something fragile. You wipe your hands on a rag, leaving behind dark streaks of oil. It is nearly time for breakfast now, though breakfast is a simple affair. The rations are brought up by a pair of men carrying a crate. Inside are tins of bully beef, hard biscuits, and a few lumps of sugar wrapped in paper. The tins are dented, the biscuits pale and dry, but no one complains. Food is food. You take your share, a tin, a biscuit, and a mug of tea brewed from water that has been boiled until it no longer smells of chlorine. The tin is opened with a small key, twisted carefully until the metal lid peels back with a faint snap. Inside, the meat is soft and gelatinous, and you scoop it out with the tip of your knife, spreading it on the biscuit to soften it before you bite. The taste is salty, metallic, but familiar. You chew slowly, savouring the warmth of the tea between bites. Around you, the trench is alive with small conversations now. Someone tells a story about a football match back home, his voice low and steady, as though afraid the memory might shatter if he speaks too loudly. Another man hums tunelessly, tapping his mug against the rim of the crate. Someone laughs softly at a joke, too quiet for you to hear, and for a moment, the trench feels almost like any other gathering place, except that the walls are made of earth, and the sky overhead is a pale, washed-out grey. After breakfast comes the work of tidying up. Crates are stacked, mugs are rinsed, bits of paper and tin are gathered and thrown into a small pit to be burned later. One man carefully folds his blanket, even though it is still damp, pressing the edges until it forms a neat square. Another brushes the mud from his trousers with the palm of his hand, leaving streaks behind but seeming satisfied with the effort. These small acts of order are comforting. They are a way of reminding yourself that you are still capable of shaping this place, even if only in the smallest ways. You take a moment to check your pockets, making sure your matches are dry, your knife sharp, your small keepsakes still in place. Some men carry photographs, the edges worn soft from being handled so often. Others have lucky charms, a coin, a ribbon, a small religious medal that they touch briefly before slipping them back into their pockets. These rituals are private, but you notice them. They are as much a part of the morning as tea and bread. When the last of the mugs have been emptied and the last cigarette stub ground into the duckboards, the trench falls quiet again. The men settle into their places, some sitting on crates, others leaning against the sandbags. The sun is higher now, though still weak, and its light turns the puddles in the trench a dull silver. Somewhere far away, the guns speak once, a single deep thud that rolls across the fields like distant thunder. No one moves, no one looks up. This, too, is part of the routine. The morning rituals are done now. You feel a little cleaner, a little warmer, a little more prepared. Your face is smooth, your rifle is ready, and your belly is no longer empty. It is not comfort. Exactly, there is little comfort to be found here, but it is something close. It is enough to carry you into the long, slow hours of the day ahead. You take one last look at the basin, now empty, except for a thin layer of soap scum, and you think about how many mornings have begun just like this. How many men have stood where you are standing now, doing these same things, following these same quiet steps to prepare themselves for another day in this narrow strip of earth. The thought is strangely reassuring. The war may be vast and terrible, but this moment, this routine belongs to you and to everyone who has ever shared this space. You pick up your rifle, sling it over your shoulder, and take a slow breath. The day has begun. The first thing you notice, even before you fully wake, is the smell. It has been here longer than you have, older than your presence, older than the morning light that is only now creeping over the rim of the trench. The smell is everywhere, in the damp air you breathe, in the fabric of your clothes, in the folds of your blanket. It is layered, made of so many things that it is impossible to separate one from another. There is the smell of wet earth, of course. The trench is built from it, shaped by hand and shovel, packed into walls and floors. When the rain comes, it softens and releases its scent, rich and heavy. Even now, when the sky is clear, the smell clings to everything. It is a living smell, almost green, as if the ground has been turned so often that the roots themselves have been disturbed and left to rot. Beneath that is the sharper smell of wood from the duckboards beneath your feet, from the support beams that hold the trench in place. The wood is always damp, never quite dry, and it carries with it the faint sourness of mildew. When you run your fingers along it, the grain feels soft, almost spongy. The smell is one you have come to recognize without thinking. The smell of wood that has been wet for too long. And then there is the smell of smoke. It clings to the air, even when no fire is burning nearby. Last night's fire left behind only grey ash, but the smell lingers on your clothes, in your hair, in the very walls of the dugout. It is a comforting smell, in a way the smell of warmth, of tea boiled in a battered tin, of damp socks held near the flames until they steamed. But it is also a smell that mixes with everything else, never entirely clean, never entirely gone. As you move through the trench, you notice other smells, more subtle but always present. The smell of canvas, wet, stiff, and faintly chemical from the waterproofing treatment that keeps the rain from soaking through. The smell of metal, of rifles oiled and carefully cleaned, of tin mugs and ration tins, of the wire that coils along the top of the parapet. The smell of grease from the machinery, from the hinges of doors and the bolts of rifles. And then there are the smells that no one speaks about, but everyone notices. The smell of sweat, strong and unmistakable, heavy in the morning air before anyone has had a chance to wash. The smell of unwashed wool, of boots that have been wet for days and never fully dried, of socks that have been worn too long. These are human smells, intimate and ordinary, but here in the close air of the trench, they are magnified until they become part of the place itself. Further along, there are other scents that you try not to think about too much. The faint sourness that comes from latrine pits, dug into a corner of the trench and covered as best as they can be. The smell of waste, unavoidable and ever-present, carried on the breeze and settling into the corners of your memory. It is the smell of necessity, not neglect, and yet it lingers long after you have walked past. Sometimes, when the wind shifts, other smells come drifting in from no man's land. There is the smell of grass, torn and trampled, of the wild flowers that still try to grow despite everything. On some mornings, if the breeze is kind, you can smell the faint sweetness of damp earth, untouched by boots or shells. And on other mornings, there are smells you do not name aloud, the sharp, metallic tang that means something lies out there, just beyond sight. But perhaps the strangest thing about the smell of the trenches is how it becomes familiar. At first, when you arrive, it is overwhelming. It clings to you until you can taste it, until it feels as though it has sunk into your very skin. You think you will never get used to it. But then, slowly, without you even noticing, it becomes part of your world. You stop flinching at the sourness of the latrines. You stop noticing the wet smell of earth except when it rains. Even the smell of smoke becomes so normal that you miss it when it is gone. Some men joke about it, saying you can tell a trench soldier by his smell long before you see him. Others speak quietly about the way the smell will follow them home, long after the war is done. They say it will cling to their memory the way it clings to their coats, impossible to wash out, impossible to leave behind. You wonder about that. You wonder if one day, years from now, you will walk through a quiet field somewhere, far from here, and the smell of wet earth after rain will take you back to this place. You wonder if you will remember the exact mix of smoke and mud and wood and metal, so clearly that for a moment you will feel the trench beneath your boots again. As the morning goes on, the smells shift slightly. Breakfast is cooked somewhere nearby, and the smell of tea and bully beef rises, mingling with everything else, until the whole trench smells faintly of salt and boiled leaves. Someone lights a cigarette, and the sharp, sweet smell of the tobacco curls through the air. The smoke is caught by the breeze and drifts lazily toward you. For a moment, the trench smells almost peaceful, almost like an ordinary morning anywhere else. Even the smell of gun oil, sharp and chemical, becomes strangely reassuring. It means the rifles have been cleaned, that the ritual has been done, that the morning is unfolding as it should. The trench has its own rhythm, and the smells are part of that rhythm, as constant as the sound of boots on duckboards or the distant thud of artillery. As you sit on a crate, mug in hand, you notice the smell of the tea rising with the steam. It is faint, barely, there, but it reminds you of kitchens far away, of mornings that began with bread and warmth. instead of mud and rifles. The memory is almost enough to make you smile, and you sip slowly, letting the warmth fill your chest. It is strange, you think, how even in a place like this, you can find moments that feel gentle. The smells may be harsh, they may cling, but they are also reminders that you are alive, that you are here, that this day is just beginning. You finish your tea, set the mug aside, and take a long, slow breath. The air smells of earth and smoke and sweat and grease, but it is the smell of the world you know now. The smell of your trench, your companions, your small place in this vast war. It is not pleasant, not exactly, but it is yours. Once the morning rituals are complete, the trench slips into a curious stillness. The sun is higher now, though still pale, casting long shadows across the duckboards and catching on the wet patches of earth until they gleam like mirrors. The bustle of early tasks has faded, leaving behind a kind of quiet that is not quite silence. It is a time for waiting, and waiting is something every soldier must learn to do. You find a place to sit, a crate perhaps, or the edge of the fire step and settle in. The wood is rough beneath you, but it is familiar, worn smooth by countless other men who have sat here before you. The sound of boots moving along the trench grows softer now, less frequent, until all that is left is the occasional murmur of voices, the creak of leather, the faint rattle of a canteen being shifted on a belt. The air feels thicker at this hour, the smell of earth and smoke more pronounced now that there is no distraction of work to keep your mind from noticing. Somewhere, a kettle boils gently on a small fire, its lid rattling softly with each puff of steam. The sound is almost comforting, a reminder that even here, the ordinary act of making tea continues. You watch as a few men gather in a small circle nearby, sitting cross-legged on the duckboards. One of them pulls out a deck of cards, its edges softened and bent from use, and begins to shuffle. The sound is soft, rhythmic, as the cards slap gently against each other. They deal them out with practiced motions, and soon the group is bent over their game, speaking in quiet tones, the occasional low laugh rising like a spark and then fading away. Another man sits on an overturned bucket, pencil in hand, a scrap of paper balanced on his knee. He writes slowly, stopping now and then to look into the distance as though searching for the right word. Perhaps it is a letter to his family, perhaps to a friend or a sweetheart far away. Whatever the words, they come carefully, as though they carry a weight beyond the page. When he finishes, he folds the paper with deliberate care and tucks it into an envelope that is already creased from being carried too long in his pocket. Some men simply lean back against the sandbags, eyes half closed, letting themselves drift for a little while. Sleep is never deep here. There is too much noise, too much to be alert for, but even a few minutes of quiet rest is precious. You can tell who is truly sleeping and who is simply thinking by the way their hands rest. The sleepers are slack, the thinkers hold their fingers loosely curled, as if gripping something only they can see. From time to time, someone walks the length of the trench, checking that everything is as it should be. The sound of boots on the boards grows louder as they pass, then fades again. These routine checks are as much a part of the day as the meals or the cleaning. They remind everyone that the trench must be kept in order, that this waiting is not just idleness, but part of the slow rhythm of war. You take a moment to look up at the sky. It is a pale, washed-out blue, streaked with thin clouds. A bird flies overhead, its wings catching the light, and for a brief moment it feels strange to see something so free above this narrow strip of earth. The bird disappears into the distance, and the trench feels a little smaller once it is gone. Sometimes, when the hours stretch long, someone begins to hum softly, a tune so low it seems to blend with the wind. Others join in, one by one, until a faint chorus drifts along the trench. It is not loud enough to carry far, just enough to remind those who hear it that they are not alone. The melody might be a folk song, or a hymn, or just a tune remembered from childhood. When it ends, the quiet feels deeper, as though the trench itself is holding its breath. You notice how much there is to observe when nothing is happening. The way water trickles slowly from a crack in the trench wall, leaving behind a dark line in the mud. The way a loose thread on someone's sleeve sways slightly with each breath of wind. The faint shimmer of heat rising from a patch of ground where the sun has struck it just long enough to dry the surface. These are small things, but they fill the hours as surely as any game or conversation. Sometimes, if supplies allow, someone passes around a bit of tobacco or a rare sweet. The cigarettes are rolled by hand, thin and uneven, but when they are lit, the smoke curls lazily upward and the trench smells faintly sweeter for a while. Those who do not smoke watch the thin plumes drift and vanish, following them with their eyes as if hypnotized by the slow motion. At other times, someone produces a small book, its corners worn and its pages stained. The words are read aloud, softly, so that those nearby can listen. The voice is quiet, almost meditative, as if the reader is trying not to disturb the air too much. The story might be an old one, well known to everyone, but still, it is listened to with attention. Here, a story is more than entertainment. It is a link to another world, one that feels impossibly far away. There is work to be done, even in these slow hours. Rifles are checked again, kit is rearranged, boots are inspected for wear. A shovel is taken up, and a bit of earth moved from one place to another, strengthening a wall or deepening a sump. The sound of the shovel biting into the earth is steady, measured, the sound of maintaining the trench that keeps you safe. And yet, despite the work, the hours seem to stretch and stretch, like a long road with no end. The mind drifts easily in this stillness, moving from one thought to another, sometimes circling back on itself. You think about home, about meals you once ate, about the sound of a door closing or the smell of fresh-cut grass. You think about things you have not thought of in years, a classroom, a river, a certain winter morning. The trench holds these memories quietly, letting you wander through them at your own pace. As the afternoon wears on, the light shifts, becoming softer, more golden. The shadows grow longer, and the air cools slightly. Someone stirs the embers of the fire and adds a bit of wood, coaxing a small flame back to life. The smell of smoke drifts through the trench again, sharp and familiar. Tea is brewed once more, and the sound of mugs being filled breaks the stillness. The men gather in small groups, drinking slowly, speaking even more quietly than before. The conversation drifts from one subject to another, from the weather, to stories of home, to rumours of when the next relief will come. No one seems in a hurry to finish. The tea is hot, and the fire is warm, and for a little while it is enough simply to sit and breathe and watch the smoke rise. The long hours pass this way slowly, almost imperceptibly. There is no rush, no clear dividing line between one moment and the next. Time here is measured in the smallest of ways. The length of a cigarette, the shuffle of a deck of cards, the scratching of a pen across paper. By the time the light begins to fade, you feel both as though nothing has happened and as though the day has been very full indeed. When the first hints of evening creep across the sky, the trench begins to stir again. There will be more work to do soon, more tasks to prepare for the night ahead. But for now, as you sit quietly and watch the last of the sun's glow fade from the horizon, you realize how much has been contained in these long hours. The games, the letters, the quiet thinking, the small, shared silences, and perhaps that is the secret of it. The long hours are not meant to be filled with excitement or action. They are meant to be lived through, one slow breath at a time, until they are behind you and you can look back and say, yes, we were here, we passed this day together, and we made it to the other side. By the time night falls again, you have almost stopped noticing them. The little sounds they make blend with the rustle of boots, the drip of water, the far-off rumble of guns. But they are always there, as much a part of trench life as the mud or the smoke. They belong to this place as surely as you do. The first movement you see is a flicker at the edge of your vision, a shadow darting from one side of the trench to the other, quick and practiced. Then you hear the faint scratching. The soft patter of tiny feet on the duckboards. A rat appears, bold and sleek, its fur shining faintly in the dim light. It pauses just long enough to look at you, its whiskers twitching, before continuing on its way, weaving through the narrow space as though it owns it. You might feel the first stirrings of revulsion, the instinct to drive it away, but no one else moves. The other men barely glance at it. They are too used to the sight. The rats are everywhere here in the walls, under the boards, behind the stacks of sandbags. At night, they seem to multiply, as though they are poured into the trench from some unseen source. They are not afraid. In fact, they seem almost tame, their boldness growing with each passing day. Some of the rats are small, quick, almost delicate. Others are huge, fat, from feeding on whatever they can find. You have heard stories everyone has of the really big ones, the ones that grow to the size of cats. You think the stories might be true. You have seen one or two that would not seem out of place in a farmyard. They move slowly, confidently, as though they know no one will challenge them. At night, when the trench is quieter, you can hear them more clearly. They rustle through the straw in the dugout, scrabble along the parapet, knock over empty tins in their search for food. Sometimes you wake to find one sitting at the foot of your blanket, staring at you with bright, unblinking eyes. It does not run when you move, not right away. It waits a moment longer, as though deciding whether you are worth leaving. Some men make a game of hunting them, setting little traps, or waiting with a bayonet to strike at just the right moment. They laugh when they succeed, toss the bodies away without ceremony, but the rats always return, as if there are endless numbers of them just beyond the trench, waiting for their turn. The war does not seem to touch them. You think about what they live on, scraps of food, mostly crumbs of biscuit, bits of bully beef left behind, anything edible that is dropped or forgotten. But you know they find other meals too, meals you do not like to think about. It is said that the rats feed on what lies out in no man's land, that they grow fat on what the war leaves behind. And when you see the largest of them, their bellies swollen, their fur glossy, you cannot help but believe it. The lice are quieter. You do not notice them at first. They are too small, too discreet. It begins with an itch, just a little one, on the back of your neck or along your collarbone. You scratch, think nothing of it, and carry on. But the itching does not stop. It grows, spreads, until it is a constant background to your thoughts. You find yourself scratching absently, even as you eat or clean your rifle. Everyone does it, and no one comments. It is simply part of being here. When you finally examine your shirt, you see them tiny, pale specks moving in the seams, clinging to the fabric. There are more than you expect, more than you want to think about. You hold the shirt near a flame, watching as the heat kills them with faint pops. The smell of singed cloth fills the air. It is satisfying in its own way, but you know it is only a temporary victory. By tomorrow, the itching will begin again. Some men joke about them, call them their chats, speak of them as though they are old friends. It is easier that way. Easier to laugh than to think about how thoroughly these little creatures have claimed you. They are in every seam of every uniform, in every blanket and bit of straw. There is no escaping them. No matter how many shirts you boil, no matter how often you sit by the fire with your cuffs turned inside out, watching for movement. At night, when you lie still, the rats and the lice seem to take over the world. You can hear the faint rustling in the dark, feel the occasional tickle along your skin. You try to ignore it, to drift into sleep, but sometimes it is impossible. You scratch until your nails leave marks, until the skin beneath your shirt feels raw, and still you know they are there. And yet, as strange as it seems, you grow used to them. The scratching becomes part of the rhythm of the day, just another thing to do between meals and inspections. The sight of a rat scuttling past no longer startles you. You begin to accept their presence as inevitable, even predictable. If a day were to pass without either of them, you would almost miss them, as though something had gone wrong. You notice that some rats are almost friendly, in their way. They learn to come close when food is being prepared, to wait patiently near the cook's fire for scraps to be tossed aside. They sit up on their haunches, bright-eyed, whiskers quivering, until someone tosses them a bit of biscuit. Then they dart forward, grab it, and vanish into the shadows. There is something strangely reassuring about their persistence, as though they are proof that life goes on even here. The lice, too, begin to feel less like invaders and more like a fact of existence. You and the other men sit together sometimes, shirts off, picking through the seams and squashing what you find between your fingernails. It becomes almost a social act, a time to talk quietly, to share stories, or simply sit in companionable silence while you do the necessary work. One day, you wonder what it will be like to leave this place, to put on a clean shirt that has never been worn in a trench, to sleep in a bed without rats rustling nearby, to wake without the need to scratch. You wonder if the quiet will feel too empty without the sound of claws on the boards at night. You wonder if you will still wake sometimes, convinced that something is crawling on your skin. Perhaps that is the strangest thing about these companions. They are a nuisance, yes, but they are also a reminder that you are not alone. The trench is shared space, not just with other men, but with other forms of life. You are part of a larger system here, a system that includes mud and smoke and rats and lice and everything else that crawls or grows or lives in this narrow strip of earth. By the time the next dawn comes, you no longer flinch at the sight of a rat, no longer think twice about scratching idly at your collar. The trench feels strangely complete with them in it. They are part of its story, part of the long, slow passing of its days. And though you would never say you are grateful for their presence, you understand that they belong here just as much as you do. The day has crept forward, almost without you noticing. The pale light that seeped over the parapet at dawn has grown softer now, fuller, casting faint shadows along the trench walls. It is neither warm nor cold. Simply a muted presence, a reminder that time is passing. By this point in the day, you have done your share of sentry duty, checked your rifle, perhaps helped with small tasks around the trench. Now comes a pause, the one that almost every man waits for the midday meal. There is no ringing bell, no call of a bugle to announce it. The first sign is the smell, faint at first, then unmistakable. The aroma of food being prepared drifts down the line, carried on the still air. It is a simple smell, a mixture of tinned meat, boiled water, and perhaps the faint sweetness of tea, but it is enough to make the stomach tighten with anticipation. In a place where every day feels much like the one before, the promise of something warm, something that fills the stomach, is a small comfort. The cooks work from a central point, a dugout or a small shelter where the equipment is set up. The fire is low, mostly smoke, and there is always the risk that too much smoke might draw attention from the other side, so it is tended carefully, shielded as best as possible. The pots are blackened from long use, their sides slick with soot. Someone stirs the contents slowly, a tin spoon clinking softly against the sides. What is served rarely varies. There is bully beef, always bully beef, a compressed block of tinned meat that must be broken apart with a knife before it can be eaten. Sometimes it is warmed slightly, though just as often it is eaten cold. There are hard biscuits, so solid that some men break them up and soak them in tea to make them edible. When there is a rare delivery of bread, there is quiet excitement, but today there is none. A ladle of stew, if there is stew to be had, is poured into a mess tin, steaming faintly in the cool air. Each man brings his own tin, dented and darkened from weeks of use. You line up quietly, waiting your turn. There is little talking. Most save their words for later, when the food is in their hands. When at last the stew is ladled into your tin, you step aside, careful not to spill a drop. You sit on an ammunition box or perch on the edge of the trench wall, whatever space you can find, and begin to eat. The first bite is always taken with a kind of slow care, as though to make it last longer. The stew is thin, mostly liquid, with a few pieces of potato or turnip floating in it. Sometimes there is meat, small and tough, but not always. The taste is plain, but it is warm, and that alone makes it better than anything eaten cold. Around you, the others eat in silence or speak in low voices. There is a sound to this moment, a sound you will remember, the faint scrape of spoons against tin, the occasional clink of a mess tin being set down, the quiet murmur of conversation. Somewhere further down the line, a man laughs softly at a joke only those near him can hear. It is not loud, not out of place, just a gentle ripple of sound that disappears into the stillness. When the tea comes, it is served in whatever vessel a man can find: a mug, a tin, even the lid of a mess kit. The tea is strong and dark, boiled in the same pot day after day, until it carries a taste that is part leaf, part smoke, and part something indefinable. You sip it slowly, feeling the warmth spread through your hands, the steam rising in a thin curl into the air. For a brief moment it almost feels like home. There is a quiet curiosity in the way men treat this meal. Some save part of it, tucking away half a biscuit or a piece of bully beef for later in the day. Others eat quickly, as though the sooner it is gone, the sooner the next moment of rest can come. There are small rituals. One man always crumbles his biscuit into the stew, another mixes tea with everything he eats, claiming it improves the taste. You watch these habits with a kind of detached interest, noting how each man makes the meal his own. Now and then, someone receives a parcel from home. When that happens, the midday meal becomes something more. The contents of the parcel, perhaps a cake or a tin of jam, or even a few cigarettes, are shared out among the nearest men. It is not enough to feed everyone, not really, but it is enough to make the moment feel special. There is talk then, quiet thanks, perhaps a story about the person who sent it. For a few minutes, the trench feels a little lighter. The rats are not far away, waiting for their share. You see them sometimes, sitting just beyond reach, watching. If a crumb falls, they will dart forward, seize it, and vanish again. No one bothers to chase them off. They are simply part of the scene, as inevitable as the mud under your boots. When the tins are empty, they are wiped clean with a piece of bread, if there is bread, or simply licked until no trace of stew remains. Water is scarce, so there is no washing up to be done. The tins are put away, ready for the next meal. A few men light cigarettes, cupping their hands to shield the glow. The smoke rises slowly, mingling with the faint mist of the midday air. And then, almost as quietly as it began, the meal is over. Men drift back to their posts, to the work of repairing sandbags or draining water from the trench floor. The silence returns, broken only by the occasional murmur of conversation. The day resumes its slow, steady rhythm. You sit for a moment longer, holding the empty tin, feeling the warmth of it fade. There is something strangely comforting about this small routine, about the way it breaks the day into pieces you can hold on to. The food is not fine, but it is something sure, something you can count on. Later, when the memory of this place begins to blur, you might forget the details of the fighting, the orders shouted down the line, even the sounds of the guns. But you will remember this: the faint smell of bully beef in the air, the feel of the warm tin in your hands, the quiet scrape of spoons against metal. It is one of the few things in the trenches that felt steady, predictable. You think, for just a moment, of kitchens far away, of stoves and tables and chairs, of plates set out carefully. The image is soft, distant, like a memory from childhood. Then you set the tin aside and stand, brushing the dirt from your hands. The moment has passed, but another one will come tomorrow, at the same hour, with the same smell drifting down the trench. After the midday meal, there is rarely time to sit long and do nothing. The trenches, like living things, require constant care. They sag, they collapse, they fill with water, they collect mud and debris. They are not permanent fortresses, no matter how long they have stood. The earth is always shifting, always threatening to undo what was built the day before. And so, almost as soon as the meal is over, the quiet is replaced by the slow rhythm of labour. It begins with an order passed down the line, a voice calling softly from one dugout to another. The men move with slow reluctance at first, but there is no real choice. Work must be done, and it must be done every day, whether the sun is shining or the rain is falling. You pick up a shovel, its handle smooth from long use, its blade still caked with dried mud from the last task. Some are sent to drain water from the trench floor. They work with buckets, scooping up the brown liquid that gathers in shallow pools and tossing it out through special drainage holes. The sound of the water being flung out is strangely satisfying, a steady splash, again and again, like a slow rhythm keeping time. Others patch sandbags, filling them with earth scooped from the side of the trench and stacking them carefully along the parapet to keep it strong. Each bag is heavy, the earth damp, but there is a certain comfort in the repetition: fill, tie, stack, then fill again. Farther along, a group repairs duckboards, those wooden planks that line the trench floor. Without them, men would stand ankle-deep in mud all day, and so they are carefully replaced whenever they break. The hammering is soft, muffled, barely loud enough to carry, but the sound travels from section to section like a distant heartbeat. At times, the work takes you outside the trench entirely, into the open space of no man's land, though never far, and never without caution. Under the cover of daylight, you might carry barbed wire forward, or strengthen the front line, or build a listening post. These moments are quiet, tense, but still slow, deliberate. Every movement is made with care. There is no rushing. To rush is to make noise, and noise is dangerous. You notice that everyone works at their own pace. Some move steadily, never stopping, their hands quick and sure. Others pause often, leaning on their shovels, letting the weight of the day settle on them before they move again. There is no shouting here, no driving force to hurry things along. The work is its own taskmaster. It will take as long as it takes. The smell of earth rises with every shovelful. It is a heavy, damp smell, neither pleasant nor unpleasant. Simply a reminder that you are part of the soil now, bound to it. Your hands grow slick with sweat despite the cool air, the shovel handle becoming warm and smooth in your grip. Dirt cakes under your nails, smears across your trousers. There is no point in trying to stay clean. By the end of the day, the mud will find you no matter what you do. Sometimes, while working, the men talk quietly among themselves. The topics are ordinary: home, food, the weather. Someone mentions a rumour that leave might be granted soon, though no one is sure if it is true. Another man tells a story about his village, his voice slow and even, as though he has told it many times before. The conversation fades in and out, mingling with the scrape of shovels and the soft thud of sandbags being dropped into place. There is a peculiar rhythm to all of this, a rhythm that, after some time, becomes almost soothing. You begin to notice the pattern: shovel into, earth, lift, turn, drop. Your body falls into the motion, your mind wanders. You think of nothing in particular, just the next task, the next bag to fill, the next puddle to empty. In this way, the hours slip by almost unnoticed. Occasionally, a shell lands far off, its dull thump reaching you after a second's pause. You stop for a moment, listening, but if no more follow, the work resumes. The front is never entirely silent, but you learn to tell the difference between distant noise and danger. Today, the noise is distant. As the afternoon goes on, the labour grows slower, muscles ache, hands grow tired, and the weight of the shovel feels heavier than it did at first. But there is a strange satisfaction in seeing the trench look just a little stronger, a little drier, a little safer than it was that morning. You can see the fresh lines of sandbags, the repaired planks, the water cleared away. It is not much, but it is something. In some ways, this work is more than just maintenance. It is also a kind of defense against fear. The busier your hands are, the less time your mind has to wander to darker places. When you are digging, you are not thinking about shells or raids or the next time you might be sent over the top. You are simply moving earth from one place to another. There is a quiet comfort in that simplicity. Occasionally, someone hums softly, a tune barely louder than a whisper. It is not meant as a song. Not really, just a small sound to keep the rhythm going. You find yourself matching the shovel's movement to the hum, letting it guide your pace. Even here, even now, there is space for something like music. The light begins to shift again as the afternoon wears on. Shadows grow longer. The air cooler. There is still more work to be done. There is always more work to be done, but soon it will be evening, and other tasks will take priority. For now, you finish one last load, one last sandbag, before resting your shovel against the trench, the wall. You stretch your back, feeling the dull ache that comes from hours of lifting and bending. The muscles in your arms are tired, your hands rough and sore, but there is a quiet sense of having done something necessary. The trench will hold a little longer because of this. The water will run off more easily. The floor will be a little drier underfoot, and tomorrow the work will begin again. The same tools, the same earth, the same slow rhythm. There is no end to it, not really. The trenches require care as constantly as a fire requires tending, and as long as you are here, you will be part of that care. In the quiet that follows, as the tools are put away and the men return to their posts, you look once more along the trench. It seems almost peaceful now, the walls straight and strong, the floor more level than before. For a brief moment, you feel that you and the trench are partners of a kind, you keeping it standing, it keeping you safe. Then the moment passes, and the day moves on. The day has stretched on, and now the light begins to fade. It happens slowly, almost gently, the sun slipping lower behind the horizon, painting the sky in shades of grey and faint blue. In the trenches, the coming of night is felt more than it is seen. Shadows deepen along the walls. The air cools, and a hush seems to settle over everything. The noises of the day, the scraping of shovels, the low murmur of conversation, the steady clatter of tools give way to something quieter, something softer. Night in the trenches is not rest. It is a change of rhythm, a change of tasks. There is work to be done, as always, sandbags to repair, wire to mend, patrols to send out. But the world feels different now, cloaked in shadow, shaped by the pale light of the moon or the sudden burst of a flare. The familiar trench, with its muddy walls and wooden planks, takes on new shapes, new edges. Under the dim light, it feels at once the same and entirely different. You notice first the sounds. In the daylight, the trench hums with quiet life voices, movements, the scrape of boots against duckboards. At night, those sounds diminish. Every word is hushed, every footstep softened, every movement made with care. Even laughter, when it comes, is low and brief, quickly swallowed by the stillness. In the distance, you hear the occasional crack of a rifle, the faint thud of artillery far away, the sudden hiss of a flare rising into the night sky. Each sound feels sharper now, as though magnified by the silence around it. Then there are the smells. The dampness of the earth grows stronger in the evening air, mingling with the faint smoke of small, carefully hidden fires. The scent of sweat and wool is heavier now, carried more easily in the cool night. And sometimes, carried on the wind, comes the smell of the other side, the faint aroma of their cooking, their tobacco, their life lived in mirror to your own. The closeness of it is startling, as though you could reach across the darkness and touch them. Nightfall brings with it a new kind of labour. Some men take up their shovels again, digging quietly in the dark, extending trenches or repairing walls by feel more than by sight. Others crawl into no man's land, carrying coils of barbed wire, laying them out carefully under the pale glow of the moon. The work is slow, deliberate, the men moving like shadows against the ground. There is no rushing here, no loud commands, only hand signals, soft whispers, and the constant awareness that noise travels differently in the night. For those not working beyond the trench, there is the watch. Sentries are posted at regular intervals, standing quietly at their stations, rifles at the ready. Each man takes his turn, an hour or two at a time, eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the parapet. The duty is simple, but it is not easy. You stand still, listening, watching, waiting. Every rustle of grass, every shift of the wind, every distant sound seems to carry weight. Most times, it is nothing, but you must watch, and you must be sure. The watch is a test of patience as much as it is of vigilance. Time moves differently here. Minutes stretch into hours, each one marked only by the slow turning of the stars above or the faint glow of a cigarette end fading in the dark. You shift your weight from one foot to the other, grip your rifle tighter, loosen it again, breathe slowly. The silence around you is not empty, it is full of tiny noises, each one magnified in the stillness. The flutter of a moth's wings, the quiet drip of water, the distant murmur of voices from a nearby trench. All of it blends together, creating a strange kind of music, a low hum that keeps you company as you wait. Sometimes a flare arcs into the sky, rising with a hiss before bursting into bright white light. For a few moments, the battlefield is revealed in stark detail, the jagged lines of barbed wire, the craters scattered across no man's land, the silhouette of trees long since shattered. You hold your breath, waiting for movement, but there is usually none, and then the light fades, the shadows return, and the world is once again hidden. There is a certain curiosity in the way the mind wanders during the watch. You might think of home, of faces you have not seen in months, of streets and fields far from here. Or you might think of nothing at all, simply watching the horizon, letting the silence fill your thoughts. Some men find a strange peace in it, the act of standing still, the rhythm of breathing in time with the night. Others find it more difficult, their minds restless, searching the shadows for things that are not there. Now and then, you hear voices from the other side. They drift across the still air, soft and indistinct, but unmistakably human. Sometimes it is laughter, sometimes song, sometimes simply the murmur of conversation. It is a reminder that those you watch for are not so different from yourself, men in their own trenches, taking their own turns on watch, whispering their own stories into the night. The thought lingers for a moment before fading, replaced by the steady weight of your duty. Back in the trench, those not on watch or at work settle in for what rest they can find. Some write letters by the dim light of a candle, their heads bent close to the paper, their words slow and careful. Others smoke quietly, the glow of their cigarettes hidden in cupped hands. A few close their eyes, trying to drift into sleep despite the noises around them. The trench at night is never silent, never truly still, but there are pockets of calm where men find a kind of uneasy rest. The hours pass. You change places with another sentry, stepping down from the fire step as he takes your place. Your legs are stiff, your shoulders heavy, but you feel a faint relief. The duty is done, for now. You find a place to sit, perhaps against the trench wall, your rifle across your knees. The ground is cold, the wood of the duckboards rough beneath you, but you close your eyes for a moment, letting the darkness settle over you. Night in the trenches stretches on like this, slow and steady, marked only by the change of sentries, the occasional burst of light, the distant echoes of gunfire. It is a different world from the day, quieter, sharper, more uncertain, and yet, in its own way, it is familiar, as much a part of the rhythm of trench life as the morning stand to or the midday meal. By the time the first pale light of dawn begins to creep across the sky, you feel as though you have lived a lifetime in those hours of darkness. The watch has passed, the night's work is done, and another day waits just beyond the horizon. The routine begins again, the cycle unbroken, the trenches alive once more with the sounds of waking. And you think, for a brief moment, how strange it is that even here, even in this place, nightfall can feel almost timeless, a pause between one day and the next, a breath held in the stillness, a reminder that life continues, even in the quietest of hours. When the last of the night's work is done and the final sentry has taken his place, the trench becomes quiet again. The men who are not on duty settle into their dugouts, wrapping themselves in blankets, lying down wherever there is room enough to stretch. The wooden planks beneath them are hard, the air is cool and damp, and the smell of earth is strong, but it is a kind of rest, however imperfect. You feel the stillness now, deeper than before. The trench is not silent, it never truly is, but the sounds have softened, become distant, muted. A quiet cough here, a boot shifting against the boards, the faint scratch of a pen as someone writes by candlelight. Even the rats move softly, their tiny claws scratching faintly along the walls. In the darkness, everything is slower. For many, this is the only moment of the day when their minds are free to wander. The body is still, but the thoughts are not. Some think of home, of streets they once walked, of kitchens warm with the smell of bread, of faces waiting far away. Others think of small things, a song half remembered, the taste of tea, the colour of the fields in spring. These thoughts come like quiet visitors, settling in one by one, staying only as long as they wish. Sleep, when it comes, is not always easy. The ground is cold and uneven, and there is always noise somewhere, the distant boom of artillery, the faint murmur of voices from the next trench over. But eventually, the eyes grow heavy, the body surrenders its tension, and sleep begins to pull at the edges of thought. Dreams in the trenches are curious things. Some are bright and warm, filled with memories of home. A familiar door opens, a familiar voice calls out, and for a moment it is as though the war has fallen away. These dreams bring a quiet comfort, even if they fade with the morning light. Other dreams are stranger shadows, moving where there should be none. Voices calling from just out of sight. The shapes of the trenches twisting into unfamiliar paths. These are the dreams that leave the sleeper stirring, shifting restlessly, the brow furrowed even in sleep. But they, too, are part of the night, part of the mind's way of sifting through the weight of the day. There are those who lie awake, staring at the wooden beams above them, listening to the sounds of the night. They count the minutes until their turn on watch, or until dawn comes, whichever is sooner. Their thoughts are quiet but restless, turning over worries and small fears like stones in the hand. What will tomorrow bring? Will the trench hold? Will the letter from home arrive this week, or the next? Sometimes, in these moments of wakefulness, there is a strange sense of timelessness. The trench feels as though it has always been here, as though it will always be here, the night stretching on without end. It is as though time itself has slowed, narrowed to this single dark corridor of earth and wood, this quiet breath between one day and the next. And yet, there is comfort in the routine. Each day is much like the last, and each night follows much the same pattern. Work, watch, rest, repeat. There is a rhythm to it, a steady pulse that continues no matter what happens beyond the trench. It is not a rhythm of excitement or drama, but of persistence, of quiet endurance. Occasionally, a man will speak softly to the one lying beside him, a few words exchanged in the dark. A small joke perhaps, or a shared memory, or simply the reassurance that someone else is awake, someone else is listening. These brief murmurs fade quickly, swallowed by the night, but they leave a trace of warmth behind. The moonlight sometimes falls just right, slipping through the gaps and casting faint silver shapes along the trench walls. You watch it for a while, letting your mind rest on the familiar patterns, the curve of the sandbags, the rough texture of the boards, the way the light moves when a breeze stirs the air. These small details anchor you, hold you in the moment. Hours pass like this, quietly, gently. The men sleep or wake, dream or watch, and the night carries them toward the edge of morning. Somewhere beyond the trench, the first bird begins to sing, a single note against the fading darkness. It is a sound so soft you might think you imagined it, but it is real. Another bird answers, and soon there is a thin thread of sound weaving through the still air. Dawn comes slowly here, creeping into the sky with pale light, turning the edges of the horizon from black to grey. The trench begins to stir. Boots scrape against boards, someone yawns, someone else stretches and pulls on their gear. The sentries blink against the new light, the last of the night's quiet fading as the day begins again. The cycle continues, just as it did the day before, just as it will tomorrow. There is comfort in that, to a sense that nothing has truly changed, that the world holds steady, even here. It is a strange kind of peace, but peace all the same. And so, as you lie back one final time, listening to the faint sounds of life beginning again, you let the weight of the night settle over you one last time. The war is still there, the work still waits, but for this moment, there is only the quiet, the slow turning of the world, and the soft rhythm of breathing in the dark. Good night, listener. May your own dreams be gentle, and may the night carry you, softly and steadily, into morning.